Hi, I'm Skinny Cheeks. In this video, I'll be breaking down all the important changes coming for Update 37. I've had quite a few videos over the course of the PTS where I dive a bit deeper into many of these topics. Definitely recommend checking those out if you want a bit more detailed info. But this video will be more of a general summary to catch everyone up who hasn't been tracking the changes or to serve as a reminder for those who were but may have just forgotten. To start off, as usual, with the Dungeon Pack DLCs, we will be getting 2 new dungeons, Scrivener's Hall and Balsanar. I've done both of these on the PTS now, and since the devs buffed up some of the mechanics midway through the PTS cycle, they are quite challenging on the hard modes now. I'd probably put them on par with Coral Airy, maybe even a smidge above, but it's hard to say as of now with only a limited amount of time spent in there so far. I'm sure they will get a bit easier with some more practice. The new dungeons will each have 3 new 5-piece sets and 1 monster set, so I won't go over all of the new sets coming as I've already done a video for that, but I will cover the ones that I think will have a big impact. First up is Rune Carver's Blaze. This is a light armor set from Scrivener's Hall. There have been a handful of changes to this set over the course of the PTS, but this tooltip here that Zosh just posted on one of their web articles is the version going to the live servers. So beware of the YouTube videos using the broken PTS version that is doing way more damage than it should be. So the way that the set works is that every 3rd tick of your damage over time abilities will now proc additional flame damage from this set. So this is going to synergize really well with dot heavy builds, and I think it should be the #1 Necromancer DPS set and probably the #1 set for Dragonknights for quite a few fights as well. I think even with other classes it will be situationally really good for a handful of fights. This is the main set that I'm going to try to farm up as soon as possible for the new patch. Next up is Abyssal Brace. This one will probably be super niche, but I'm including it here because it is the only source aside from the Warden's Deceptive Predator skill for minor evasion, which is a 10% damage reduction to AoE abilities. Stack this with major evasion for 20% and you have 30% reduction to the damage taken from AoEs. It could be interesting and allows the group access to something that they didn't have in the past. Definitely don't think this is one of those staple sets, but seeing as it does give us access to a new buff, I thought it was at least worth mentioning here. And then finally, the monster set Ozezon the Inferno. Overhealing yourself or an ally grants them 4272 armor for 1 second. Healing yourself or an ally grants them minor vitality for 1 second, increasing their healing received by 8%. So this is going to be a really nice monster set to add in some defensive help for groups. I definitely see this one finding its way into a lot of group compositions. I've seen some people comment on the 1 second timers, but that is plenty long enough if you have this on a healer since they will have multiple healing abilities ticking. There were also some new rewards for the worthy sets added. I won't break all these down as I'm pretty out of the loop for PvP, but Snake in the Stars seems to be gathering a fair bit of attention. I've seen people talk about that one the most, so probably one to keep an eye on there. The daily and weekly reset timers are changing up a bit, and this is going to be a really nice quality of life change. Instead of having a bunch of different timers tied to your character's last completion of the activity, they are just going to all reset together at the same time. They're also removing the 12-hour window for the hireling timers to put them on the same reset, and to compensate, they're doubling the rewards for rank 3 of 3 in the passive. So if you're like me, this just means a lot of extra stuff when I log in since I rarely took advantage of the second wave of hireling mats each day. And then the weekly trials will also be changed to a global timer instead of based on your character's completion. This was really annoying for groups that ran something together on a weekly basis, as that reward would constantly be pushed back bit by bit until you couldn't earn it within your scheduled window anymore, and essentially you just miss a week. And then they also said that the weekly resets are going to be moved to Tuesday instead of Sunday. So overall, great changes here with the reset timers, just a lot less for us to keep up with now. For the combat balance changes, they did make some adjustments to the scaling of our light attacks. I did a full breakdown if you want to get nerdy with me about the specifics, but essentially they made it so that at low stat levels, you're going to get way more damage from your light attacks than you previously did. However, that damage will cap out now pretty quickly. So it is based on a combination of your max resource and weapon and spell damage, but about 33k max resource and 7888 weapon and spell damage are the previous stats needed to get to the level of light attacks that you are going to cap out at now. So if you are below that combo of stats, you're probably going to see an increase, and if you are above it, you're probably going to see a decrease. So with the new patch, it will only take about 4190 weapon and spell damage with that same amount of max resource before you cap that stat out. Personally, not a big fan of this change. I don't like caps on stats, and I don't think this is going to have much of an impact overall. It doesn't really help those that don't weave efficiently. It just helps those with lower stats. So I don't don't think this is going to make or break anything, but it just feels like a bit of an unnecessary change to me. Next up are some really great quality of life changes for tanking. Bar swapping while you are actively bracing will no longer temporarily disable block. So this will be really nice for preventing deaths in that small window where that previously would drop before. Single target chain abilities will now also taunt for 15 seconds, so you no longer have to chain and then taunt whatever it is that you cast the chain on. It's a 2-for-1 combo now. And this chain will not override any existing taunts, so you don't have to worry about if you are assisting someone else who is holding aggro in the chaining process. And then finally, over taunting will not happen until 5 taunts instead of 3, so this will reduce the likelihood of applying it unintentionally. Essentially, for 2 tank situations, if you grab something on accident, it's not very likely now that it will be over taunted and the tank that is assigned to it unable to grab it back from you. Yeah, I really like all 3 of these changes they made for tanking in this patch. And for the enchantments, they have finally combined weapon and spell damage, so no more worrying about your group composition for which ones you need to have on your jewelry. And they've added a small amount of recovery to each of these to differentiate them, since they do still require different glyphs to craft them. So thank you, Zos, for addressing this. I really like this change a lot. I hope you guys keep going with cleaning up stuff like this. The Bloodthirsty trait was buffed up for all non-gold quality jewelry, so that having it golded out does not make as much of a difference as it used to. Purple jewels will be a little bit less behind the gold jewels than they currently are. Harmony is also being reworked to no longer be a boost to the specific synergy used, but instead now it just gives a flat 880 health, magicka, and stamina back whenever you use a synergy. The Archdruid monster set, this is the one that provides major vulnerability. It's having its hitbox changed to a rectangle to help it be a bit more reliable to hit the intended targets. Pearls of Elnifey, this set now grants 3 ultimate when you cast a heal while under 50% of your dominant resource, rather than 5 ultimate while under 30% of that resource. So a bit of a nerf here to this set, but it will be a bit easier to use as well. For the skills and the passives, we'll start with Dragonknight's Empowering Chains was renamed to Chains of Devastation, and it now grants 4 seconds of Major Berserk after using it. It's probably going to be pretty niche for PvE use, as it is only 4 seconds, so I don't see this one being weaved in longer rotations, but maybe for some like really quick stuff where you pull yourself in and just have that Major Berserk for 4 seconds and immediately kill something that already has low health anyways. I see this as more of a PvP buff to give DKs that nice 4-second burst window. And then the Helping Hands passive that restores 880 stamina will no longer trigger from Ash Cloud, since that ability has no upfront cost to it. They did buff up the stamina return to 1120 for using this with other skills in that line, such as Igneous Shield. And then for Necromancers, the Grave Robber synergy was reduced by 34% to put it on par with Conduit and Combustion, instead of it standing out by itself as a much harder hitting synergy than one sourced from other non-ultimate abilities. So from what I've been seeing, this paired with that Harmony change is pretty much killing Necro Bombing for PvP. But they did get a buff to their Death Gleaning passive, which will be 666 magicka and stamina instead of 200. So quite a large buff there for situations where there are multiple enemies dying. For Sorcerers, their Conjured Ward is getting a big buff all around, and then it will also now scale with your max health or your max magicka, whichever is higher, instead of only your max magicka. So not only will it be a better shield for magicka sorcerers, Stamsorcs can now also use it since it scales with health, and tank sorcerers will have access to a really massive shield to go with their larger health pool. Mage's Fury, the Sorcerer Execute, will be buffed a bit as well, going to a 5 meter radius instead of 4 meters, and then the Mage's Wrath Morph will now hit with the full damage amount in that 5 meter radius. So this is going to be a really nice AoE execute ability. It should hit super hard now. And then the Conduit synergy from Liquid Lightning and Lightning Flood was also boosted up by 20% to hit for the same as other damaging synergies. This was already really nice to have if you had a Sorcerer in the group, but now it will be even better. For Templars, their Empowering Sweep ultimate was renamed to Everlasting Sweep, and it will now last from 12 seconds to 22 seconds depending on if you hit between 1 and 6 enemies, so it could definitely keep this up for quite a long time now. For Wardens, Cutting Dive will now always apply its bleed, so you don't have to worry about it landing on the enemy while it is off balance and not getting that secondary bleed effect. Just really nice quality of life here, not having to worry about the off balance timers and all that. Just cast the skill and you will get the bleed. For Crystallized Shield, that got a bit of a rework. Shimmering Shield will now give you a bit more ultimate back than it did previously, but it will cost more and it's not going to restore any magicka. So a bit more draining to use than it was previously. And the damage for the slab morph was also reduced by 33%. For non-class skills, Elemental Susceptibility was fixed to no longer be overridden by other people using it or other sources of major breach, so you can reliably get its effects now for all situations. However, they did reduce the total number of ticks to 5 each time you cast it instead of 6, so it still lasts for 30 seconds, but it will now tick every 7.5 seconds instead of every 6 seconds. Frostwall will now apply Minor Breach for the reduced armor if it hits a chilled target, so this will be a really easy way to keep up Minor Breach for Ice Staff tanking without needing an absorb stamina enchant to proc Sundered. For the two-handed skill Wrecking Blow, this now grants 5 seconds of Major Berserk whenever you cast it. This is going to be a pretty big change overall. Two-handed front bar was a very underused loadout for PvE DPS, and this is looking to make it very strong. It seems like for purely single target damage, this is the route to topping out. However, I think dual wield is still very close, and it offers quite a bit more flexibility, and there are many encounters where that 0.8 second cast time for a spammable is going to be really annoying to use. I'll definitely be keeping my eye on it. I don't think it's going to be so overpowered that it'll be used everywhere, but it will probably work its way into the meta for some encounters. For vampires, Mistform has been changed to be a gap closer, similar to the Sorcerer's Streak. The elusive Mistmorph now gives major expedition and evasion after reappearing, and the Blood Mistmorph gives you 20 seconds of an AoE around you, similar to the Warden's Arctic Blast or Templar's Solar Barrage, and then that AoE will heal you for 45% of the damage that it does. Werewolves will now give Minor Force and Empower from their Feeding Frenzy synergy, and they can also take their own synergy. The buffs only last 10 seconds though, and synergies are on a 20-second cooldown, so 50% uptime does seem kinda meh. I think it would be really nice if that timer was either extended or if they changed the synergy to go to multiple allies at a time. So overall, nothing really too crazy here, nothing that's going to shake up things completely like some patches we've had in the past. For the most part, the game will still continue to be played in the same way that it was, with some better quality of life and a bit more diversity and options for ways for us to set up. But that's going to wrap up the Update 37 changes. As I mentioned, this was a bit more of an overview. I do have all of the videos diving a bit deeper into these topics that I'll have linked in the description, but I hope this helped everyone to catch up on all of the changes coming. I want to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. The contributions help a ton to keep the website and YouTube channel going. And a special thanks to Nicholas, Simon, Cougars Bay and the Cougar City Guild, the Order of War Guild, Kente Chris Cat, Shady, Iffy, Blake1816, Mordecai1212, Santanico, Fedriti, Florian, Phoenix, Nalandia, Unemployed, Cresceliana, Cha-Cha, and Technical KO. Thanks again, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.